Okay, here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is. I hope it's good to be where you are, because it is really good to be here today. My name is Baltimore Fats, and this is the continuation of Baltimore. Okay, so we're just going to pick up right where we left off yesterday, okay? And yesterday I was talking about the duality of the front page, the left versus the right, right? And we talked about the consumerism and things that were going on over here. And so let's take a look at the right side and see what the right side has to tell us. And so when we blow that up, it kind of looks like this. You get your news of the day. Your major story here is this Brian character. He was the Democratic Party's sacrificial lamb of the day, right? He went up. He was a nominee for president like for 3 election cycles in a row and kept losing to like Roosevelt and McKinley or whomever, right? It's a major story of the day. He wanted the government to own the railroads, right? And thinking about the state of the railroads today, I have to wonder, if there was a little bit of a long game going on here. And you get your summary of the news and the weather, and I think it's interesting that this is a government weather report. It makes me wonder when did news outlets stop getting their weather from the government, right? Is AccuWeather and, whatever the other meteorological weather agencies are, are they government owned and run? And they give you the forecast for the whole country here, right? And in Europe as well. But you get some other stories, and you could get so much from all of these stories. You never know which one has the potential to be predictive, but so I'm not going to go into the details of all these news articles and stuff. I just want to demonstrate, what you get from, like I was saying, if you have a predilection to read from right to left, you get news first. And what is this Baltimore Sun and other news agencies telling us? But by the way, they divide the front page this way. But in terms of the rest of this episode, we need to go back to the left side because that's where all the action is, at least for this episode. And pull that back up. Because I've been having a hard time launching into the Jubilee proper. And it's because little things have been coming up, and I was hoping to really almost do like straight reporting, as it were, straight documentary style, do the Jubilee first and then bring in all like the ancient religion aspect of it, right? But I can't do it. And so, because things like this keep happening to me, right? I was going through, and right here's the amusement ads we were talking about yesterday. And here we have Prospect Park, another big amusement park, right? And this one has races. But September 11th through the 15th, right? They got races every day, all right? They have a great cattle display and poultry show. There's going to be a full military band, right? This is all during the same time frame as the Jubilee, the same week. And so that made me think of, and I was like, how much stuff do they have available for people to do, right? There's so much going on while the Jubilee is happening. And you have the Junior OUAM. They're going to be at Gwynn Oak Park on the 12th. The 12th is the biggest day of the Jubilee, right? And they're going to have a sham battle and fireworks, and we're going to talk about the Junior OUAM very soon. But so all of this activity, the dates just started popping and made me think about how did I get first sort of sucked into this idea of Baltimore, and the Jubilee. And that all happened through the Walking Delusional tour. Of course, it's been happening from the beginning, right, with Gambrinus and Orpheus. And I had a little side note. Calliope, by the way, is the mother of Orpheus. Forgot to mention that yesterday as well. No coincidence there. And during the Walking Delusional tour, whoops, I keep doing that. During the Walking Delusional tour, I found Tanit. And So that made me start looking at like the older religions a little bit, just quickly. And I think it's hilarious to me that I felt I could do a Jubilee, like Baltimore or Jubilee or whatever it was going to be. I could bang out in like 3 hours is what I thought, right? When I first started looking into this. Oh, this will be, talk a little ancient religion here, that kind of thing, right? And it's just turned into so much more. But when I first came upon the Jubilee and the dates of it, made me try to think, well, what could they be celebrating, right? Because if I'm looking at the Roman influence, which of course Baltimore is, you know, is Rome in America, right? For lack of a better phrase, and so looking at these Roman connections, and they were all about their games and their bread and circuses and their parades, and what kind of festival could be lining up during this week, right? That they would be sort of mimicking. That was the idea. And at first, my first thought was the autumn equinox, which is the 22nd or 23rd every year. I mean, this year it was on the 23rd. And I was like, well, the date's kind of wrong there, right? Because we're looking at the 9th through the 15th. But then I started thinking about, well, they're not going to be using the calendar that we use today. They're going to be using the Julian calendar or something older. And when you look at the Julian calendar, and this one's at least a day behind, right? There's a 13-day gap between what we're recognizing today as the date versus what they would have been recognizing as the date in Caesar's time. The turn of that, first millennia, whatever, 2,000 years ago, they would have had the date of October 3rd for today. So when I take those 13 days away here, right, the autumn equinox would have been on Monday, September 10th. That would have been the autumn equinox. Unbelievable, right? And so that's more connections back to the old ancient Roman world, right? And when you look at, and so that's a connection back. And what other things? And so what other things could have been going on during these dates that I could, transpose back onto like the ancient Romans? So I wanted to look up other Roman festivals and stuff. What was happening? And this is all in the early connections of, all in the very early, that very first rabbit hole when I was looking down for Baltimore, right? And so the Roman festivals, right? And they were a very important part of Roman religious life. Of course they were. The Roman religious life is the ancestral ethnic religion of the city of Rome that the Romans used to define themselves as a people, as well as the religious practices of people brought under Roman rule. And so they, not only do they have their ethnic religion, and that's going to be an avenue to go down later, they adopt the religions of those places that they conquer, and that's very important going forward. And look at this is holding victory. See, I didn't go that far ahead. Look, victory. This is this defaced de Roma, holding victory, and regarding an altar with a cornucopia and other offerings. Now, victory is the Greek goddess Nike and was associated with Bologna. Bologna, the name of the road where my boy Douglas Thomas was killed. It's just unbelievable the way this thing comes together. Right? And it says the Romans thought of themselves as highly religious and attributed their success as a world power to their collective piety in maintaining good relations with the gods. And so I had to click on that. And it goes, and so it brings you here to this Pax Deorum, right, translated in English as peace, compact or bargain or agreement. Right? In religious usage, the harmony or accord between the divine and the human was Pax Deorum, right, the peace of the gods. Right? But also, the very next one is the sacrifice. Right? Peace through sacrifice is the message that's coming to me from here. Right? But let's get back to the festivals and head straight to September. And so here we go with September. Right? And September is really about Jupiter. Right? And they have, from the 5th to the 19th, right at the same sort of time frame that they're holding the Jubilee here, right? They have the Ludi Romani, right? The oldest and most famous of the Ludi. And the Ludi Romani were the biggest games of the year, right? And it was a religious festival in ancient Rome. And it's funny, this article doesn't really talk about the religious aspect of it, but more the celebratory and the timekeeping, the calendar uses of the Ludi. It doesn't really go into like so much like what the religious services were, right? What service did they pay to Jupiter during the Ludi Romani? That's going to be an avenue of exploration down the line. But these were the major games of September, right? And there were games in every month. There was always something. And this is what I was trying to do, trying to connect the Jubilee to this, to the ancient Romans and beyond. Right? And on the 13th, right, this is the big day, right, for Jupiter Optimus Maximus, right? The greatest great Jupiter, right? Right? And it was an Epulum Lovis, right? Epulum Lovis. And when it was a sumptuous ritual feast offered to Jove on the Ides of September. And Jove, of course, just another name for Jupiter, another name for Zeus, another name for the big kahuna, right? And he's got holding victory. Now, this victory is now popping all over the place. Interesting. So we have that, right? And when I'm tying it in, we're going to skip ahead here a little. So these are the dates here. When I look at what they have lined up for the Jubilee, which is on, of course, the back page, right? What's back is front. All right, so an outline of this week's Jubilee. Yesterday there really wasn't much going on. Today, the equinox, if you're observing the Julian calendar, right? The boat comes in, the cruiser that I showed you. There's a bunch of stuff happening down in the harbor, right? These revenue cutters, the Seminole and Apache, that revenue cutters are now today the Coast Guard, right? They talk about that there's going to be lights on, so get on down to Baltimore and Utah streets for the light show this evening. But then it really begins on Tuesday, September 11th with the military parade, right? And then on Wednesday, the 12th, the industrial parade. This is the biggest day of the Jubilee, right? Thursday, the 14th, there's the firemen's parade. So it's all these parades, just like they would have had during these festivals. And here the 13th is the biggest day, the biggest feast, all right, for Jupiter Optimus Maximus, right? And on the 14th was the approval of the horses, the cavalry parade, the military parade, which they have here on the 11th. And it's interesting, because the dates, when you put them together, who knows what the proper days are? Because especially there was this great side article on the Gregorian calendar, which I looked up briefly, right? And so 2019 in the various calendars, look at this. Nobody has any idea what the real date is. Ooh, that's a Holocene calendar, 12,019. That's interesting. I like that date, 12,000. What is Holocene? It's the human era. So this is what they put us 12,000 years ago? The Neolithic Revolution, when we started to transition from the hunter-gatherer. 12,000 years ago, we did that now. So anyway, who knows what the real dates is, or what the real dates are, when these parades really happen and so on and so forth. But being able to tie them so closely to the Ludi Romani is unbelievable. And when I see the word Ludi Romani, what I did look up, as I said in the other episode, that ancient Indo-Aryan language, Binti. When I searched Binti, this is what it brought me. It brought me Sinti Romani. Again, so I don't know why nothing came up for Binti, because I would imagine that would be like an Indian language or something like that, something from that region. But they bring up Sinti Romani for me, right? And foster care. What is this? Binti's a positive adoption language. Wow. Interesting. I can't go down this rabbit hole, but this is exactly how they happen, guys. So I do a quick search for Binti, and it brings me this Cindy Romani. I scroll down a little bit, and I get foster care and language of families, and this has Binji language. I don't know. Binti's a novel, right? But it's interesting that the first thing it brings me is this correction to Cinti Romani, and I'm looking at the Romani and HOUDI'D Romani and all of that. Right? So looking at these dates for everything this is what's kind of tripped me up, and I needed to make these connections and get these connections out there, at least on this superficial level, because going forward, this is where the research is bringing me. We'll see how deep I get with it. See which way the squirrels lead me. So when I pick up next time, I'm definitely going to be getting more into the day-to-day of the Jubilee. And so to wrap this one up, there were a couple of points that I wanted to touch on with the calliope again and this amazing picture. And so I wanted to just take a closer look at this picture because I noticed some things while I was watching the episode again that I didn't pick up on. And again, that's just all a byproduct of the RP and how little I actually see of this image at any given time. But, the lion, pops out now. This little guy here reminds me of the things that I'm finding all over the place, like my bog creature. And all of that's going to come in further. And the proportions are kind of strange. Like, we have the horses here that are drawing this carriage. Right? And the guy driving the carriage proportionately seems okay to the horses. But look at this tiny guy feeding the boiler that provides the steam for the calliope organ. And then the woman playing it, so tiny. And then there was also, in the comments section, okay, so something went horribly wrong in the recording process there, and the whole end part needs to be redone. So hopefully I'll do it better. And I was going to close out with mentioning this picture here, which was Baltimore 1916, and I was talking about what was this, what, and could you do this today, kind of thing. And so I got a comment from Pretty Crystal Clear that the Baltimore Historical Society wants us to know that this is Houdini in front of the Sun Building on Charles and Baltimore streets, and she beat out Mary by just a few minutes. But Mary added that there's a picture of him hanging upside down on Charles Street. So I wanted to see if I could find that, and I could. All right, and because here it is. There's Harry Houdini hanging upside down on Charles Street, and there's some other great pictures of the throng. Here, right? And this one as well. All right, amazing. All right, what could I learn about this display that Harry Houdini put on in Baltimore? Right? And so I found this, right? Wild about Harry. Look at those eyes. It's unbelievable. Right? And down here it says that Baltimore was a regular stop on Houdini's tours. Of course it was. Houdini loved himself some Baltimore. And why wouldn't he, with its creepiness, and he the king of exposing the seance hoaxers. Right? What's not to love about Baltimore for him? And so it was a favorite. It was a regular stop for him. And this is where it says he performed a suspended straitjacket escape from the Sun Building before a reported crowd of 50,000. And it was also in and it was also in Baltimore at the Maryland Theater that he debuted his 3 shows in one, right, on August 31st, 1925. And so there's also a picture of that Maryland Theater. Here it is. All right, so that's where he normally performed when he came into town. I don't think that thing is still here today. I'll have to look. But so they say that this crowd was 50,000, and so that made me think, now wait a minute. Now, like, M&T Bank Stadium, this holds 70,000 people. This is where the Ravens play. And when I was thinking about that number, 50, because 50,000 was what set it off, because I know there's more than 50,000 capacity at M&T Bank, and that made me think, well, there was the Super Bowl parade not that long ago, and that could have drawn the type of people down into downtown Baltimore. I mean, I know my neighborhood was a nightmare during that parade, and so when I looked that up, all right, here we go. All right. And when I dug a little bit into, now this looks like it's probably inside the stadium. But here we have some street views right, along Light Street here. And this is probably Pratt, I don't know. But when I looked it up, it said this had an estimated attendance of 200,000. All right, and I found some other images here. All right, 200,000. All right, look at just the different angle. This is the same street, just maybe a different time in the parade or whatever. So you have this, which they claim to be 200,000, versus this, which they claim to be 50,000. Right? I mean, it seems like they're Houdiniing the numbers here. Just like they Houdini the numbers for the calendars so they can celebrate Roman ritual holidays under the radar. We've been Houdini'd. Okay, so I'm going to end this one here. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and until the next one, cheers, guys.